Welcome back to the Jefferson-Rogers podcast. Today, I have a fun guest for you guys, Mr. Jerry Fussell. Remind me what episode we're on?
9.
Episode number 9. You'd think I'd keep track of this.
You think it'd be like 90? You're so famous now on the podcast.
Yeah. We're getting there, you know?
Yeah.
But episode number 9. We got Jerry in the house today. He flew all the way in from, not Arkansas.
Missouri. Same
Missouri.
thing, though. Same thing.
Right next door, right?
Right next door.
So I'm excited to have you. I got some cool questions for you, and I hope you brought your A game because we're live right now.
Yeah.
Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
So just to start things out, how about just like a brief background on Jerry?
Sure. So just like a lot of your guests, I started out in the door-to-door industry. Started out selling cable and internet, and this was when internet first became a thing from the cable company. So I love selling it. I did not love the fact we got paid like $30 a sell. So I had to sell like
to do a lot.
5 to 10 of them a day to make real money. But it was something that I was good at. I ran that model and that career at the same time I was in the military. So I was in the military for 13 years during my door-to-door career as well. So I'd go work in the military, then I'd go knock doors in the night or on the weekends. And what's funny is over all those years, 6-7 years in a row, I made more money door knocking than I ever did in the military or any of the other jobs that I ever had. So when I
Must have been pretty good.
No, I think it's just anybody that works hard, right?
Yeah.
So we love to think we're sales geniuses, but at the end of the day, it's how many doors you knock on and how many people you talk to makes the biggest difference. And that's why I always encourage young guys to give it a try because they have more energy. Like a young guy's going to out-knock me today, hands down, if he knocks 100 doors than I could do out
Absolutely.
In the desert weather.
If you can teach them how to work those numbers, you can teach somebody from a mediocre background to be able to make some serious money.
Some serious money. The other thing is, besides the money, I look back on my door-to-door days with fondness because there's a statistic I like to talk about with a lot of people, but by the time you hit 18 years old, you graduate high school, you've only had 100 conversations one-on-one with other people in your entire life. 100. So it's a very minimal, but think about it. You might have stayed behind class to talk to your teacher one-on-one one time. You might have talked to a pastor or your parents, a couple dozen times one-on-one when you're getting in trouble or when they're telling you good job for something. But it's very, very limited. And I know you have a lot of brothers, so it's probably even more limited. You probably didn't have a ton of one-on-one time with your parents. And so the average, though, is that you only have about 100 conversations. And we're not talking hour-long conversations. We're talking 5-minute one-on-one conversations. So then when these kids get into door knocking and they're 18 years old, and I shouldn't call them kids. You're a man when you're 18, but they're still very young. And they're going to have 100 conversations in the first 3 months of door knocking. So, and that's if they're an average rep. If it's a killer rep that's on fire that just wants to communicate well and talk to people, he's going to get out there and make even more of it. And so I believe it fast forwards your communication ability by far. I took speech and debate in school, and that was more talking at people. And then door knocking is absolutely communication. It's not just telling them something. The worst door knockers are the ones that just go up and do their spill, and the guy says, no, I'm not interested, and they walk away. Mm-hmm. The best are the ones that can carry on a full conversation and change that conversation based on the needs of the client. And so it changes your world being a door knocker. I mean, even if you just get out there and you do it for one summer, with Vivint or one of those companies that do the summer jobs. I was doing a year-round thing, so I kept on it for years and years. But it was invaluable. Most of the skills that I have today in communication came from, being a young guy door knocking. They didn't come from the military. I don't get much out of knowing how to shoot a gun or knowing how to sleep in a tent. That doesn't make me a lot of money, but knowing how to communicate with people makes me a lot of money. And so extremely thankful that I was a door knocker.
Absolutely.
And then that opened up some other doors for me. So I went from there. I was in the military, obviously. I opened a business over in Iraq called Anaconda Online. I sold computers to soldiers and made some good money there. I took that money, invested it in a business with a contract with Walmart and Sam's Club and those companies to work on their computers when I got back. Because, again, I was a good communicator, so I convinced them I was really good at computers. And really, I knew very little about computers, but I hired guys that knew a lot. So kept that contract for about 4 years. During that time, I also started with a company called ADT. a lot of door knockers that might listen to this podcast had probably spent some time at ADT. I went ADT corporate and made really, really good money. So I did that for about 5 years.
Wow.
And was in the top 1% of ADT. But I realized during my time at ADT two things. One is that if you're selling a product that you have to be physically present every single time you do a transaction, your time is worth X amount of money. So the only way I can make more money once I became a really good communicator wasn't to become a better salesperson, it was to work more hours. So I found myself for years, the last probably 2 or 3 years I worked there, working 80 plus hours a week. And I was providing for my family, but I think a lot of door knockers get in that funk where they're like, man, I've maxed myself out. I'm making $150,000 a year.
Absolutely.
But I am maxed out, and had my first child in the house, and so it's just a time in my life where I needed something different. At the same time, I had several reps get recruited by a solar company, and it made me really mad. These are my top reps, and so I just...
From ADT.
From ADT.
So you guys had like a leadership position that you were in.
Yeah.
But it was still, you were trying to max out your hours because the only way that you could really make money is if you're there showing up every single day.
Every single day. Yeah. Saturdays to help with call blitzes, as a manager role, helping other offices, traveling. I had multiple offices. So, if I didn't show up and do the monkey show and do what I was good at, I wasn't going to make money. Mm-hmm. And so it was just this cycle that no matter what level I got to in that organization, I had to show up every day for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours and do the job or I wouldn't make more money. Mm-hmm. And so, but I got upset because my top reps who I'd invested a lot of time in started getting stolen by a solar company. So I just walked in the door and said, what is going on? Why are you taking my people? This isn't ethical. And he said, well, why don't I talk to you about getting a job in solar? And I can show you why I'm taking your top reps.
Let me just explain to you why.
Yeah, and he did, and it made sense. And I started in that for a while, and then very quickly realized that with my skill set in building teams and doing that I finally found something that I could rapidly scale and not be the only one out there doing the show.
You've been in solar ever since.
Ever since, yeah. And so now my passions have moved on to include a lot more things, but solar was definitely what made me financially stable and what most of my net worth is built on is on solar.
That's incredible. So what was it about solar? You said that you loved doing the alarm game, mm-hmm. but what was it about solar that guy sold you on that interested you so much?
Just the numbers. And so in alarms, the easiest way to sell them is there was a pitch that you would save them money on their homeowners insurance when I first started. Mm-hmm. So say it was $30 a month, we would pitch them that, yeah, you buy this equipment and then your monthly fee is $30 a month and you're going to offset it with homeowners insurance savings. Well, solar is identical to that, but instead of selling a $99 alarm system, we're selling a $50,000 solar system, but it's eliminating a $300 a month electricity bill in exchange for a payment that's less. So it was a very similar pitch, but instead of having conversations about $99, I was having conversations about 50 grand. So,
yeah, it's a little bit of a shift of mindset.
Yeah, we both have a Coach Burt, that we share, and he said the size of the problem that you're solving determines how much money you'll make solving it. Mm-hmm. And so definitely looking for a bigger problem like that was the key. And the next step up, for me was to move into business acquisitions and help with other business coaching. And again, I know you're in that space too, and we're trying to solve a lot bigger problems. Yeah. You spend your time solving problems company-wide, not just how to solve problems for an individual customer or an individual sales rep. You're solving company-wide problems, and now we're coaching other people how to do the same.
Yeah, it's interesting how what your level of problems look like from just a few years ago.
Yeah.
Being like newly married and kids, and like the problems that you thought were causing you stress compared to like the level of problems at a CEO level and overlooking a business that has 75 to 100 people.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, we probably have 350 people on payroll at this point. So, that weighs on you differently. When it was a heavy weight when I realized I had my first son, I was married, the level of responsibility was there. And it's hard to explain to anyone that isn't a CEO, but I feel responsible for them and by extension their families. Because if they don't get that payment every month, even if it's just a part-time employee, mm-hmm. if they don't get that payment every month, they could not make their bills.
That's their livelihood, man.
And so I have
Big
to
responsibility.
I have to show up every day for them and make sure that I have a stable business. You know, I believe in being debt free as a company, so I don't go into debt. And I believe in having enough money in the bank to support ourselves for 3 years worth of operation without new income. And doing those two steps helped me relieve most of the pressure. Because I'll tell you, being a CEO and trying to figure out where the money's going to come from next month is overwhelming for a lot of guys. So the majority of guys that I acquire their businesses are guys that are ready to be done because they've been living in this month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter stressful situation on how they're going to meet the bills and how they're going to pay their employees. And even though I could come in and help coach them and help them rejuvenate their business, they're ready to be done. Mm-hmm. So the most common outcome is the original owner steps away and I acquire their business, and through some type of royalty deal or some other complicated structure.
And then where the owner's stepping away, though, you got to put some pretty serious management position in place relatively quick so you can keep the doors open. Absolutely. And keep things operating at a high level. What's your approach on that?
Unfortunately, most of the time the CEO steps away, it's a relief. So you have about a month there where everyone's like, maybe this will change things. So they give you about a month worth of breathing room, but in that month you have to make some serious changes. Normally there's already a leader in the organization. So you interview everybody inside the organization. You don't normally promote them to CEO. You're looking for a COO, which is the operations.
That's another one of those keys is you're looking for these opportunities with businesses that have a pretty solid structure with some great people, but the guy at the top is maybe burned out.
Yeah.
So when he steps away, things are still going to be rocking and rolling. You're not scrambling to find somebody to run the organization.
Yeah, and we're not talking about hostile takeovers here or anything like that. So most of these the owners are thankful. You know, we set it up in such a way that they're walking away making more money every year in residual normally than what they would make running it themselves, and all of a sudden all their stress has been relieved because they have some passion too. You know what I mean? Like you and I have passions outside of solar, outside of Windows. And so imagine you've been at the grind for years and years, and you have the opportunity now to make the same amount of income but pursue something different that's your passion. You know, maybe it's playing music, maybe it's starting a different type of business. And so that's the pitch to a lot of owners is, dude, if you're burnt out, you don't have to struggle the whole time. We can figure out a way to make this work. I'm not good at everything either. I'm not the genius that's going to come in and run ops or run customer service or run those things, but I know how to hire the people that are geniuses at doing those things, and I know how to build compensation plans that puts those people in the right places.
Just like the first computer business. Is that where the idea originally came from?
Yeah, the first computer business was we couldn't get computers in Iraq, and so I just saw a gap in the market, and so I started shipping over bulk computers to Iraq. Now, a third of them got stolen, so I had to build that into my cost plan, so I had to charge quite a bit more for the computers, but yeah, and then that next computer business, and I knew nothing about shipping internationally or anything when I first started, but I just hired someone here in the States to ship me stuff, and so I just look for an opportunity. Then I say, who knows how to solve this opportunity that is willing to exchange time for money? The whole world's full of people that are willing to exchange time for money, and I'm not. So I need to find someone that wants to negotiate that with me, whether it be a COO or CEO or a customer service rep in a call center. And we need to come up with a negotiation where they'll exchange their time for X amount of money, and it's a happy situation for both of us, and then that leaves me making the profit. And so so then I got to be pretty good at owning the company to actually make any money. But that's a whole different.
So now
role.
How did this first start coming on the radar about acquiring businesses, and where did that come from?
Well, you've been to a lot of the same conferences and stuff I have. A lot of the industry in door-to-door is owned by very young owners. They got into it during college. Maybe they were young and didn't know what to do in life, and somebody offered them a job, and it happened to be one of the best experiences of their life. But it's not something that they ever really wanted. But then success led to success led to success. And so I started having these conversations, and I was initially doing consulting. So I loved it. I was like, man, we're going to sell this consulting for $100,000. We had our first few clients. I thought, man, I'm going to be a business consultant. You know, that's where the money's at. And it wasn't, because the number one thing that I ended up telling people during consulting was, I think you shouldn't be the CEO anymore. And that was a trend that I couldn't ignore. And so I just started saying, well, I can't just tell them that and then not have a solution. So I need to walk in the door, and instead of pretending like I'm a consultant, let's be very straightforward about, hey, I can fix your business, and if you want to go pursue something you're passionate about, let's talk about how to make that happen.
Wow.
And so it just kind of naturally happened because it
evolved a little bit.
Need a solution to a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So
now going back to the solar, so I've always been curious about solar because you have some different approaches than what most people do. And I'd been approached a lot early on in my door knocking career about coming to do solar. But every time that I had somebody explain it to me, it was like, listen, I got to believe in what I'm selling. I know it's a higher ticket item and I could make more money doing it. But if I can't get on board with it and believe 100% in what I'm out there selling to my customers, I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I know that there's a lot of people that just kind of ignore that aspect of it because they can make so much money.
Yeah.
But I've heard some different approaches from you, so I'm curious what your take is on that.
So a couple of statistics that I like to talk about. One is that there was a poll of solar customers that had been installed over a year ago, and this excluded California. California has super high rates. Everyone buys solar, loves solar in California.
Yeah.
Unless you buy from some companies that take 10 months to install, then you may be upset. But I won't drop their names on the podcast. But so the problem is outside of California, people's rates are more moderate, so the savings is more moderate. You may be doing a pitch where it's a break-even pitch. You know, you have a $150 utility bill. Solar payment's going to be $150, but you get to help the environment. You get to build equity in your house. So that's the normal pitch is an equity environment pitch. The big problem is that in that poll of customers a year ago that bought, 50% of them said it was one of the worst decisions they ever made in their life.
50%.
50%. You know, as far as customer satisfaction, we have rates in the ballpark of like timeshare sales. So everyone knows somebody in timeshare sales that feel bad about selling timeshares. We're in that same ballpark on customer satisfaction in the solar industry.
Wow.
The problem is they're locked into really long-term loans. So this isn't a decision to like switch electricity companies that you could switch next month. Let's say if you lived in Texas and you switch to one, then you switch to the other. Solar is a loan, or it's a PPA or a lease that is going to be 20, 25 years. So that pressure that it puts on the decision is huge. So as a sales rep, you have to overcome that and convince them it's a good idea. And they find out two things typically that make them fall into the 50% category. One is that solar doesn't cover their entire electricity bill. It's sold by door knockers. It's being designed in the house without an engineer involved. Frankly, they don't know what they're doing. And so they throw some panels on the roof through a software program that doesn't take into consideration every factor. Customer gets solar in their house. It looks nice. Everything goes smoothly. And then they still have an electricity bill. And let's say you have a $50 electricity bill some months. It totally changes your perspective of what you thought you were getting into if you thought it was going to eliminate your bill. Number two is that not only does it sometimes not eliminate your bill, but your payment ends up being higher than what they told you it was going to be. So in solar, they give you a loan, but it's only loaned on the amount minus the tax credit. And the tax credit's put kind of its own bucket at 0% interest. And you get the tax credit in a perfect world. You submit that towards the loan, and the loan gets paid off and your payment stays at the $150. But if you can't absorb the tax credits, then your loan payment would increase by 26%. So all of a sudden you think you're saving $10 a month or you're breaking even. And now your loan payment is 26% higher and you're not saving any money. And you're paying more money every month on your loan payment, and it's not covering your whole electricity bill. And that's normally why the 50% of people said it was one of the worst decisions, because now they can't get out of it. It's stuck on their roof. They're stuck with it for 25 years. They hope the cost of electricity goes up eventually and they can start seeing some savings. But remember, they don't actually remember how much they were paying. It's not like they know anything other than their electricity bill is higher and they still have an electricity bill, from the utility company. And so it's a pretty rough scenario. Then between 50% and around 90%, a little bit higher, are people that would not recommend someone to solar because one of those things happened normally.
Right. So they're not completely dissatisfied.
They're just not.
But there's a lot of uncertainty about whether or not this made sense for them.
And since they're for their friends and family members, if something changed from what I told you originally as a sales rep, you wouldn't recommend your friends and family members, because what if it changed on them and it really hurt them financially? You might be able to afford an extra $20 a month. Maybe your mom can't, and so you don't refer people. So, and then in the whole industry, the average referral rate, so out of 100 customers, only 4 to 7% of people actually refer someone to solar. and not someone that buys. Those are the number of people that actually refer someone to go solar after they've been installed. So there might be some that at the desk, the sales rep's really good and he asks for referrals right
Sure,
now.
on the spot.
That's a good way to get referrals. But if they wait a year, they're not getting any referrals. If they wait till after they get installed and they get their first electricity bill, most reps are not getting referrals.
5 out of 100 times you ask, maybe.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. And so it becomes not a circular business model. And so we have to get more and more and more aggressive trying to close deals because we know that tomorrow to eat, I have to go sell 3 more deals or sell a deal. And if I have 3 appointments, I'm going to get hyper aggressive. And when you get hyper aggressive, it makes those things we talked about even worse. Because even though in the back of your head, your voice is saying, hey, this may not be good for the client, you're like, I got to sell 3 deals because I don't have any more leads. I got to make some money. And now you're used to making $150K a year or more. And so your pressure's up because you got bills yourself too. You got to provide for your family.
Yeah.
And so you start ignoring that voice. And so I determined right away to not be one of those guys. So I said, look, I am going to sell solar and do it ethically. So there's 2 things I had to learn. I had to learn how to install solar on the roof. I had to take the engineering classes on how to design solar. And so I did that. So I installed for 6 months myself and got certified. Then I had to understand the tax credits. So I hired a CPA to fully train me out on tax credits. And at this point, we are probably the most advanced solar company on design expectations and solar tax credits mixed in. We routinely get more in tax benefits than other people would. And I guarantee you we turn away more customers than any other solar company because we know when it's not a good fit. So we have a 100% customer satisfaction. We have an 80% referral rate, meaning that even those 20% that say they're happy maybe wouldn't still refer someone because, there's always those people.
Yeah.
But 80% of our customers send us referrals that end up buying. So our referral rate is based on purchases. So we have 80% of our clients send us someone that actually buys solar from us. So it's created an evergreen or a circular business model. We're the only one in solar that I know of.
Wow.
And a lot of companies say they're evergreen. What they mean is they have a budget to spend $100,000 a month on Facebook ads, and so they always have leads coming in. Where we're evergreen because even if I cut off marketing spending tomorrow, we could fully function on referrals for the foreseeable future.
Now, on that, the marketing spend, because you guys are doing a little bit of the ad spend and getting some leads, and there's a lot of industry around solar leads.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we've been playing around with too. And I don't know if Justin talked to you about that, but me and Jared and Justin, we're all trying to find out how we make it make sense for us. If we hire a service, which I don't feel very good about, or if we bring it in-house.
I've hired 7 services and it's never worked out.
Yeah.
And I mean catastrophically not worked out. I mean
very common response.
I've tried it on a larger scale. So the number one answer you hear from them is you either didn't spend enough money or you don't have the call center resources or the experience to do it.
There's always an excuse. It's never their fault.
It's never their fault, which is also true sometimes. There's a lot of good excuses that they can use. The problem is those excuses aren't true for me. I have enough budget that if they tell me I need to spend $20,000 a month, I can spend $20,000 a month, which I've done on multiple occasions with these companies. They tell me that I need to purchase this new program and it'll solve all my problems. I've done that and it hasn't. I've hired specific people to run each campaign and click every single button and it hasn't worked. I've hired internal call centers. I've hired the best external call centers. It hasn't worked. And so you have to come into it with realistic expectations, and most people don't. The reason why marketing online doesn't really work for a lot of people anymore is because they don't have the budget to do it. If your budget is solely based on making profit per job, then you have a very limited budget. I think you've maybe heard me before, but I'll give a $5,000, and I hope some guys out there are like, what? But if you ran a solar lead and you didn't sell it and you give it to me, I'll give you $5,000. Now, that's crazy. That may be all the money we have in the deal. But what I can tell you is I'm going to go and use my evergreen model to get referrals, and I'm going to sell another 10 jobs over the next 10 years. So I don't care if I break even on the first job. And I know that everyone listening isn't in that model, so they're thinking about how to make money on this job. So if you're sitting on hundreds of leads, hit me up and be like, dude, I don't care if you run these old leads that told me they're not interested and it doesn't make sense. We'll rehash all of those, use a better financial model, better product, better process of how to design it, and I'll give you all the money we make on it. So I'll do a $5,000 referral because I'm so confident in what I spend in marketing will come back to me in referrals.
Wow.
Yeah, but don't do that if you're like a brand new solar company. 5,000 is too high of a budget for customer acquisition cost.
So what would you recommend? There are a lot of solar people and door-to-door people specifically that, in the new post-COVID age, a lot of people are thinking about, like, what can I do that can up my game and do some of that ad spend, and how do I approach it? So what's some simple direction you could give to somebody like me, which is in that boat right now?
Yeah, I would say find a mentor that's in the industry already that has a successful campaign going on, and just ask him for a favor. Look for somebody that's maybe in a different market than you. Make sure they're not a marketing guy. Make sure they don't own a marketing company or have any benefit from giving you advice.
Right.
And get really solid advice from them. Like how you're asking me for advice, Windows have nothing to do with solar. So like I could get you on a call to my marketing guy. He could tell you how to set up Facebook ads, how much to spend, what to expect. But then when it goes south, that it wasn't because of improper expectations. It was just because of what happens. Marketing's always gambling. Mm-hmm. So for everybody that thinks they're a marketing genius, they're just a good gambler. They're just good at playing blackjack. And they're better than the house the majority of times. But you know what happens? The casino eventually stops letting you do that. Same thing with Facebook, YouTube, Google. You can be really good at it one year, and then they change their rules, and you got to start all over. Mm-hmm. So I'd be very cautious using like a marketing pro. I would probably try to in-house that, and then you get a great marketing person that has other tasks too, right? Facebook doesn't take all day to run. YouTube doesn't take all day. And maybe that marketing person is highly skilled at doing something else, building out websites for you, helping with social media, and so leverage that person in a job that you are already pay someone to do, and then just divide up, their time and basically allocate a certain amount of their time is probably the most affordable way to do it.
Okay.
And then it gives you more marketing spend.
Absolutely.
I've heard a lot of companies will charge $2,500 to $5,000 a month on a retainer to run your ads. But imagine if you had an extra $5,000 to spend on ads. Like, that totally changes the dynamics of whether that campaign might work or not work.
Absolutely.
You also have someone internally that isn't doing thing. I would also watch out if someone says, let me run it on the spend on our credit cards, because there's really no evidence that they even spent the money on spend. So I have my suspicions that a couple times I hired people, no leads were coming in, or very limited leads were coming in, and they said, no, we spent your whole $20,000 a month budget. And it makes me wonder, and they invoiced me for $20,000, but there's really no proof.
But you can't see where it was spent.
No, that's super common in the marketing. So I would be careful of that.
Some good tips there. Right on. Now we're circling all the way back to the beginning, because I know you have a military background.
Yeah.
And you got some cool stories, and you had some cool jobs inside the military. So going back to like when you started in the military and some cool experiences that you remember from that time in your life. Did you start pretty young in the military?
I did. I joined, signed paperwork, I think when I was 16.
16?
Yeah, I had to get my mom. I told my mom if she didn't let me be a medic in the Army, I was going to join the Marines at 18 or whenever they would let me join. And so,
but she liked the Army?
She did. She hated the whole idea.
Oh, she did?
She's a mom. She's like, what? And I was like, well, Mom, you do realize I have to pay for college somehow, and this is before 9/11. There hadn't been a war in a long time.
Sure.
And so she's
still a mom, though. She's
still a
nervous
mom.
as shit.
So I still talked her into it, and then I joined in 01, and then slightly after is when 9/11 happened. I'm sitting in high school saying, uh-oh, this just totally changed.
Isn't that crazy? I remember exactly where I was.
Oh, yeah.
I was late as shit that day, and I walk in, and everybody's mesmerized by the TV.
Yeah.
Like, what in the is going on?
Yeah. I remember I was sleeping in class, had a full-time job, and so I was sleeping in class, and someone shakes me, and now we're watching TV. I'm like, what is going on? And sure enough, and then I played a pretty mean joke on one of my friends that joined with me, because we joined as kind of a group, and I told him, hey, man, we're getting called up, and let's go out to this field. They're going to pick us up in a helicopter, and we don't know any better. We're like 17. And so he gets all his sleeping bag and all his gear, and he goes, stays in this field. I intend to like tell him I'm joking in an hour or two and have a good laugh about it. I forget. I get busy. I had to go to work. I forget. It's not till the next day that he's not at school that I found out he had slept in that field overnight.
Yeah, right.
And was totally convinced that they were going to come pick him up.
You are pretty convincing.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Even as a 17-year-old kid.
Even a 17-year-old kid, yeah. So he was a little upset about that. But we all kind of had this notion that we were all going to have to go fight in war right away and not finish high school, and that wasn't true. You know, I went to basic training my junior summer, and then went back to high school, and then went back to the Army. No, I mean, I was a medic, so for most of my career. So it wasn't, like this hoorah, I can do a bunch of push-ups thing. It was like, how do I save as many people as I possibly can? And so Iraq was definitely life-changing for me. It turned me from a kid definitely into what I would think of as like a man, because things were way more important than playing video games or messing around with my friends or whatever. Yeah. Like, life was pretty serious for some people in the world.
Pretty big culture shock out there.
Yeah, so I was able to go back from Iraq and really, be able to stop doing low-value tasks, to cut out video games, to cut out a lot of activities that just devalued my life in general and were a time waster. And then I was able to cut out people that were time vampires, people that just hang out with you to hang out. And really it set me up for success. So it was a hard couple years, being deployed, doing all this stuff, but the lessons I learned from it definitely made me who I am. So
right on.
Pretty cool.
Some great experiences. You got to travel all over the world.
Yeah.
And now you never really talk about like being a veteran or.
No. I there's guys that are disabled vets and stuff like that. And man, hats off to them, and they can talk about it whenever they want. The reason I don't bring it up is because a lot of the times when you're a veteran, like I'm a disabled vet, but they'll talk to me like I'm not a fully functioning person anymore just because I have a pension and I'm retired from the military. And so I just don't bring it up. And there's guys out there that need help and they need assistance and they need to get a discount on lunch and they need to, get a VA loan, and there's great benefits out there for veterans to take advantage of. I just feel like I'm working really hard to contribute, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that the other guys that need those benefits can actually have those benefits.
And I think that's one of the things that I've seen. Like there's completely different sides, totally different spectrum of people like you. And then there's the other side of the coin where people they use a lot and there's a lot of negativity and it's like an excuse. And they're kind of riding the coattails still of being discharged because of medical purposes. And now every time somebody asks them what they've got going in their life, that's what they bring up. It's like,
oh yeah,
there's so much negativity around it and like enabling that goes on, and people just, oh, you know what, we appreciate your service. And I wish that there was more for these people to be able to tap into where they could get some positivity in their life and take some of those things that they learned, like the discipline and the team aspects, and to be able to apply those in their life like you have to be able to be successful.
So, and I'm glad you brought that up. So I'm also on the board of Pi Syndicate. I'm one of the founders. It's a program that helps with business strategy, taxes, government aid, like filing for PPP or EIDL or whatever you need help with, setting up LLCs. But for veterans and anyone on here that needs help, we can point you in the direction of getting tons of free government aid when it comes to education. And I'm not talking about college. I'm not an advocate for you going to college to be an English teacher for 4 years because you're going to make X amount of money when you graduate. A soldier's not ever going to get behind that and really do that if they're having life problems right now. What I'm talking about is high-level Harvard, MIT, like Wharton, big-name schools that I can put you in touch with that'll give you a free education. And it's executive level training that you'll be able to go use that training and execute on a very high level like what you're used to in the military and have a purpose in life more than just going to college.
Wow.
And I'll do that for free. There's no charge to help those guys out.
So how do we get in touch with you about the Pi Syndicate, or if we just wanted to reach out to you personally?
Yeah, my Instagram's a great way to do that. I downloaded it a few months ago when we were at a training together and they told us.
You were pretty proud.
I was pretty proud. It is Fussell, Fussell, Jerry, Jerry.
Jerry.
Yeah,
okay.
Jerry. And you can send me a message there. And if I don't get it, somebody on my team will get it and be able to forward it to me. And then I would love to hear from you guys and make comments. And if you guys have any strategy questions or anything like that, throw them up. I'd love to be grilled on business strategy too.
Right on. Yeah, I know that we have spent many hours talking about business strategy and tax strategy, and we were just doing it right before. We're getting ready to do some more after the show.
Yeah.
So Jerry is definitely the guy. If you have some questions on business or tax or any of the things that we talked about today with solar, purchasing and flipping businesses, or if you are one of those people that's burned out and you need a little bit of direction on your business, or you're thinking about the option of being able to sell your business, Jerry's a great guy to reach out to talk to about that.
Absolutely.
So to wrap this thing up, let's go into a little bit more on that, some of the tax stuff and some of the business strategy, because I know I've learned a ton from you in just the last year that we've known each other.
Well, and who do you think your audience is right now? Are you thinking of younger guys, or do you think it's
I
business
think
owners?
it's probably younger business owners, people that are they're experiencing business maybe to a point where they're starting to make some money,
Sure.
but now there's a lot of uncertainty of what to do with it and where those taxes can be manipulated a little bit just by using some of the things that are available in the tax code that most people just don't even know
you
about.
definitely don't want to manipulate your taxes. That's a word that could get you in trouble. But
So maybe that was the wrong word.
You want to mitigate your taxes through the proper investment strategy. So let's say it's a business guy, and let's say he wants to go buy a fleet of new vehicles. Like we have, 45 vehicles in our fleet. Instead of putting them in, say, Missouri and paying sales tax there, we set up a leasing company, a new LLC in Wyoming or Montana, avoid sales tax, register them there, pay insurance on them based on that location, and then lease the vehicles back to ourselves. So that alone could save you $100,000 a year in taxes. And we're talking about not just income taxes, but normal business taxes. Then another piece of advice is just how you pay yourself. So if you're not set up as an LLC right now with an S-Corp filing, paying yourself a W-2 income, then you need to give us a call, because that's a really important strategy to set up. The other thing is the IRS says it has to be a reasonable wage. So I see tons of guys that they define it a reasonable wage at $150,000 a year. That is not a reasonable wage for a new startup business. Mm-hmm. A reasonable wage in your area may be $50,000. The reason why that's important is because all of your payroll taxes are based on that W-2 reasonable wage. So if your reasonable wage is $50,000, you're paying your 15% between you and your company, probably around 15% of payroll on that number, not on the 150. So these guys that think they're ballers and they're going to pay themselves $150,000 a year are probably doing themselves a disservice, because they're paying way more in taxes than somebody that has it properly set up. Then on the back end, those guys that just pay themselves on a 1099, it's much harder to get approved for a house. So it's much harder to get approved for credit cards or anything like that. And so setting it up under the correct structure allows them to actually start building up proper credit for when they do want to buy a house or when they want to get into real estate.
Because what is the time frame that you have to have as a 1099 to be able to start qualifying for bigger loans like that?
It's a good question. 2 years even for a house. The trick to it is it's also got to be stable income, so it can't fluctuate all over the place. I one time got turned down for a loan because my income tripled year over year. And they're like, whoa, that's unstable. And I'm like, but I made 3 times the amount of money. They're like, whoa, it still seems really unstable.
Wow.
And so it's not just about how much money you make. It's about showing the proper structure for what the agencies and the banks want to see.
Some stability is what they're looking for. So even if you are 1099 inside the same industry, but you bounce between 3 companies, even if your income did go up by 3 times, they're looking at those 3 different companies.
You would never get approved for a house.
There's something funny going on here.
You would never get approved. Now let me paint a different picture. You start an LLC, pay yourself as the CEO of that LLC. You bounce around from 3 different companies, but since they're paying the LLC and you're paying yourself a W-2 wage,
great point.
You've now kept the same job for the last 3 years. And now you have a very successful business. It doesn't matter that you switch contracts or anything like that. Totally different picture painted for the IRS and for banks. The other thing is, when you go and do that, you also start building up your credit as a company. They call it a payer score. And we assist people a lot on how to build up the credit within the company. I know probably less than 10% of companies that actually care about their company's credit score. They all do it on personal credit. They're running their own name. If you ever have to put your social down on a bank form to take money out for your company, you're doing it wrong. Every investment you ever do should be on your company's ID.
So let's talk about that for a second. This is probably one of those areas I need some help in. So your payer score, because I did sign up once upon a time for what is the
Duns and Bradstreet probably is the
Duns
most
and
common.
Bradstreet.
Yeah, they're the big boys.
So if I did that at one point, that means I have it in place. It may not necessarily be growing at all.
I mean, it may be a 0. You may have a Duns and Bradstreet number
But I
with
have
a
it.
0 payer score.
Okay.
So it takes about a year, and it takes a year from people that know what they're doing. So we walk corporations through a specific path of certain lenders, certain credit cards, certain items to buy, certain
And you want to do
investments.
this even if you're like a $10 million producing business like mine, or you're a guy making 150 grand
Doesn't matter.
as a 1099.
Doesn't
You
matter.
still want to do this.
I can set this up for both of them. And you might be able to leverage $100 million lines of credit eventually. That guy can still leverage hundreds of thousands of dollars in revolving credit eventually, just based on how well his company finances look on the books.
Okay.
Also, if you go to sell your company, who wants to buy your company when it's all tied to your personal credit? Like, how is that even going to work?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so that's one of the number one problems that we have to like deconstruct with these companies, that the owner actively works in it and he has his name on the cars, he has his name on all this stuff, is how do we liquidate all those assets? Because they're not owned by the company, they're owned by the owner. So it's really, really tricky. So establish yourself in such a way that it helps with tax mitigation. It helps with your finances as far as your financial health to banks, to other institutions. And then you also want to prep your company for sale. You might not want to always do this. And I buy a lot of companies for very little amounts of money because they haven't set this up, where if they have these things in place, they would probably get a 10x evaluation compared to what I'm able to give them because they haven't done these things. All those things are things we do in Pi Syndicate right now. So we'll coach a business over the year-long mastermind how to get a payer score. We guarantee a payer score of over 70 by the time the year is up, which is substantial enough that you can do lines of credit.
What's a good range to shoot for in that payer score?
Above 70.
Above 70. You want to be above 70.
Yeah. And it would take a year if you knew what you're doing. It might take you 20 years if you don't know what you're doing.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and that's something that will help set up. I'd love to be back on your podcast in a year, and let's talk about your payer score as a company, and let's see where we got you to. And let's
Yeah,
talk
that'll be a cool story.
how we transformed
Now
your
that
company
there's
over
a
the
little
next
bit
year.
more awareness and I know some importance, come back a year from now and kind of tell about the journey.
Yeah. And you're one that's kind of interested in these conversations. Most of the events we go to together, guys are more worried about talking about yoga or how many sales they made last week.
Yeah.
Instead of
But that's why guys like us go to events like that too, because I love teaching people and I love bringing new awareness, because at one time I was that dude.
yeah.
And I'm
Yeah, I was
seeing
too.
high level guys like scared to death to even say anything.
I made bank the first 7 years of door knocking, and I didn't save a penny of it. So I'm one of those guys too that wish I had a mentor step into my life a lot earlier.
Yep, absolutely. There's a lot of benefit. It can change somebody's entire trajectory of their life just
Absolutely.
by being exposed to somebody that cares and can point them in the right direction. And the difference in 10 years from now, having zero money and nothing to show for all the hard work that they put in, or potentially having some assets, some income producing assets, and having created something because they just had some awareness.
Yeah, if you do it right, you should be able to retire in the next 10 years, no matter what level you want to retire at, if you design your business the right way. And that gives you a lot of security for your family, because let's say you get in a car wreck next year and you can't go knock doors, your income's over. Or say 10 years from now you're burnt out and you want to go be an accountant instead of a door knocker. You better have some plans in place to secure your future.
I mean, we get to see it all the time with our family members and the people that we know that are around us that were never able to take it to the next level, that they keep repeating the same patterns over and over in their life. And now they're stuck in a dead-end job, and they have no choice but to go back to work every single day until the day they die. Because let's face it, you can't live off Social Security.
Yeah. No, you can't. If it's going to be around when we get there.
Yeah, which I doubt it will.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, that is episode number 9 in the books. Thanks for coming on today, Jerry.
Thanks for
It
having
was
me.
on really short notice, which is kind of just the way that I do things.
Yeah.
Just sporadic.
Yeah, I think last night you said, hey, can you be on my podcast?
Yeah, if
I'm
you don't
like,
mind.
Well, I better jump on a plane tomorrow
You're going to
morning.
be here.
Yeah.
So let's do this. And
Absolutely.
it turned out fantastic. Appreciate
Awesome.
it. Everybody check in next time.